Hey everybody, happy Thursday, January 11th. I think this is officially the last time I'm going to use this phrase, Happy New Year. I think I've extended it past the legal time frame of like January 7th or 8th that you can actually continue to keep saying Happy New Year. But in all seriousness, Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully your holidays were spent A, safe, and B, you just had a tremendous quality amount of time with family, friends, loved ones over the holiday season. And hey, crazier things 2024, right? Calendar turns. 23 seems like a moment in time, and it's in the rearview mirror. And now it's looking forward for 2024, right? And here's wishing that every single person has a phenomenal, better year in 24 than 23. And that doesn't necessarily mean business wise either. That could be personal goals that you have set for yourself, whether it be, trips, graduations coming up for individuals, whether it be high school or college and all that good stuff. Hopefully this year brings you nothing but happiness and success in how you define that. And hey, we're excited about today's session. So thanks for joining us. It's the first one of 2024. I think we have a good lineup, not only for today, but coming up over the course of the next couple months. And I'm really excited about today's guest. I've known this individual for quite some time now. I consider him a friend. I don't know if that's a good thing for him or a bad thing, but I'm glad he was able to do this today for us. And it really bore out of a conversation him and I had in person. He was actually here in the Mid-Atlantic visiting some clients in Maryland and Virginia, and we got a chance to grab a bite to eat and just started talking about all things that he had going on, kind of the industry, where things are headed. And out of that bore kind of a further conversation around bringing some of these concepts and thought processes to you, our business partners, right? So let me give you a little bit of an introduction if you don't know who our guest speaker is. So he is a co-founder of a company called Model Match. They are a tech platform that furthers efficiencies, business development, and strategic growth. So really, I would tell you they have their hands in a lot of different things for a lot of different clients in the financial sector that they deal with. He spent over 20 plus years supporting strategic growth for clients in financial services area, not only as a consultant, but as a recruiter and a partner in all things in growth and development for the business partners that he supports. He certainly understands the value of data intelligence, which is a lot of what we're going to talk about today, and the right ways to use it, because there are a lot of them, but there's also just as many wrong ways to use it. So he's really specialized in that over a long-standing 20-plus career, and he's got a ton of experiences to talk through and back that up. So, hey, with that being said, let's bring Eric Levin out. There he is. What's going on, man?
I heard that. I consider you a friend. I think it's a good thing that we consider each other friends. I think I would normally poke fun at the Cowboys helmet that's sitting over your left shoulder because that's not my team, but I can't do that because your team is still playing and mine's not.
True. Hey, look, I consider it beneficial for me to consider you a friend. I just wasn't sure if it was your part, who the hell knows, right? So what's going on, man? How you been?
Good. Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to everybody on the call. I know you were saying, I didn't realize there was legal or any regulations around how long you're allowed to say Happy New Year. So thanks for bringing that up. I'll chat GPT that later and make sure that whether or not that's actually a real thing. You also said 23 being, a moment in time, which I think for some is a moment that many might be happy to forget. However, and you and I will play around with this in the conversation today. You don't want to forget it. You want to sort of take advantage of what you found from 23, right? You're a sports fan. I'm a sports fan. And, one of the things I always think about is that, do we watch game film? When whatever it is we're doing in our business, do we stop from time to time and just kind of watch game film the way that an athlete might and figure out, well, I had a bad game, but what can I learn from that game? Or I had a great game. And by the way, there is no perfect game. So what can I still leverage or get better at? So 23 was a moment in time. Yeah, that was a nice way to say it. But maybe we could take advantage of the things that happened in 23 to make it a better 24.
I think so, right? And I think, look, I think there's going to be a lot of things that are, and not that 23. I always call them challenging years, right? Like there was still a lot of business that was done. There's a lot of success in the marketplace from our business partners, right, for themselves personally and for their companies. It was just a little bit more of a grind, right? It was a little bit harder than, let's say, or a different hard, right? Like, don't kid yourself. I say this to people all the time. During the pandemic, when we saw the $4 trillion markets back to back for those 2 years, it was great because everybody was busy. Everybody had more volume than they had seen in a very long time. And in some cases, maybe their entire careers. And on top of that, just made, from a financial perspective, probably made some of the most money they made on an annualized basis in a very, very long time.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean that wasn't hard too. It was just a different type of challenge, right? And I think that's what's great about what we do for a living, right? Put aside the intrinsic value of home ownership and what that does for individuals in creating wealth and what it brings to the stability of a family and raising a family and everything associated with that. I just think, at the end of the day, it was probably a little bit more challenging in the last 2 years, right? But
For sure.
it's the beautiful thing about this industry, right? Like we evolve, we adapt, we take the punches and we move forward, right? And honestly, Eric, what I was excited about today, as we start to kind of get into it and talk about it, right? Like one of the things you and I have always talked a lot about is around the data, or what I call intelligence. And look, that's evolved over time, right? As far as like, we can joke around about like when we started in this industry and what you had at your disposal to use, right? But I was excited today because we can talk, pick your brain and give some, tips and some advice and some kind of do's and don'ts around, what is out there? How can you utilize it? How can you, more importantly, action on it? It's one thing to have the information. It's another thing to actually action on it. And I thought this was timely as we're sitting here, 6-7 business days into 2024, and people are starting, they've already probably thought about a business plan, but how do you modify and adapt it? This topic to me fits right in. So you tell me, where do you want to start?
Well, before we start looking at stuff, you made me think of a couple of things. You had mentioned when you were introducing me that we had dinner together when I was up in the Mid-Atlantic in Northern Virginia, and was speaking in front of a couple of companies that were doing their year-end sales rallies. And in one of those speaking engagements, I was on stage and I just asked the question, are there any originators in the room? And these were producing managers, loan officers, regionals, they were executives. But they're, the majority of the room were grinders, right? That were looking to do more business or grow their business. And I said, is there anybody in the room that's only been in the business for, say, 2 years or less? And there were a few that raised their hand. And I asked one of them how much volume they had done in their first full year. And it was like 16 million in volume in purchase business. And when we started having a back and forth about how they did it, it was a combination of like sort of new school tools and resources. But guess what was still working? It was the old school communication. And what they were finding was that they were calling on referral partners that just weren't being called on by the relationships that they'd had for a long time. And so it makes you wonder, were those relationships, were those originators, were they just waiting for market conditions to change and not looking for ways to create value from those people that they already had a connection with? So that's one thing that just came to mind as you were talking. And by the way, whether you've been doing this for 25 years or you've only been doing it for 1 or 2 years, I think that's just proof that the blocking and tackling still works at some level. It makes me think of something else, John. And, being a guy that came up not as a tech guy, like it's kind of strange to me that I look back and I think that, I'm part of a SaaS platform now, but, and that was a sort of a vision that myself and my partner had, not because we know how to code or program or that we're developers. But it made me think that sort of holy grail is the combination of the ADD superpower that comes with generally people that'll grind and make the next touch, but with some of this new school technology that'll create some efficiency. And if you keep going down this rabbit hole, I think most people maybe on this call are folks that are looking to increase their production in some way
Sure.
or another, or maybe replace lost volume for some reason. Maybe you've got agents that have aged out. Maybe you know, when we come out of a refi market, we're looking at replacing lost volume because we're now in a purchase market. Of course, that's not the case right now. But the motivation that you generally have is similar to the motivation that your referral partners have. And here's what I mean by that. It's the desire to either do more business in the same amount of time or the same amount of business in less time. And both are true. I mean, I can remember stories where, you know, someone would say to me, hey, you know, we really need to get this $3 million a month originator doing 4 million because they're so great. They could totally do 4 million. But then they go down and they sit down with them and speak to them. And this originator says, look, you're going to take my 3 million a month and be happy with it, or I'll take it somewhere else because there's other things I like to do with my life. And I know how many hours in a day it takes me to get to 3 million a month. I think some of the tools that we now have access to hopefully help us create that efficiency to hit one of those two buckets: more business in the same amount of time, or the same amount of business in less time. By the way, everybody on this call should ask yourself, which bucket do you fall into? Because what you do next will then matter. And then look, one other thing I'll throw out to you, and then you get me off of my ADD rant, because you know that'll happen with Levin if you're not careful. And that is, you were talking about years ago, man. I can remember, you know, 20 years ago, and I would guess a lot of people on this call would agree with what I'm about to say. You know, you sort of learned that the really good producers, or anybody that is involved in relationship-based sales at some level with transferable books of business. So that means you're doing business with people that don't have to do business with you. They have options. So why would they do business with you? Well, you create value for them, and they trust you. But as you get better, you find that the good ones can get 2 opportunities out of 10 touches, let's say. And the ones that aren't quite as good, it takes them 50 touches to get to that 2. Well, skill sets, but also technology can hopefully help you bridge that gap from the 50 to the 10. And I'm sure you've experienced some of this as well.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's the key, and what I want to make sure we get across today, right, is you're never going to get away from what I think you described as the blocking and tackling, right? That's just the core: building relationships, maintaining relationships. But what I was intrigued by, and continue to be intrigued by as this industry evolves, is the analytics and the data that you as an LO have at your fingertips, not only to further enhance and make your referral relationship prospecting more surgical, more strategic, with a better chance of success because you're more targeted in your approach.
Right.
But then also, I think we look at it that way more, right? Which is how do I get more referring relationships? Because I have to get more business coming to me. The more people I talk to, the better chance I have at success, which means I'm going to take an application. I'm going to close more loans, right? So that is one part of it, right? Because you got to continue to build your referral base. Real estate agents, easiest, and not easiest, but easiest one to look at in this marketplace because it's been purchased for so long. But then it's the other part, right? Like, to your existing relationships, how can you help use the data to help them become more efficient, right? And then it becomes a two-way street, and that relationship gets entrenched over time, right? So to me, like, you talked about a couple of the understanding the you, which I want you to go into that a little bit. You talk about who are they, which is more of like the opportunity within your marketplace. And I kind of look at the why, like that kind of puts it all together. But the core principle of what we want to talk about today is the data, right? How do you use the analytics? There's a lot of platforms out there. Yours is one of them, right? At the end of the day, how should people, LOs looking to grow book of business, looking to replace business that they've lost, looking to grow referral relationships, whether it be adding more or offsetting ones that they've lost? Because to your point, people retire, right? It's time to move on to the next phase of life. So why don't we go there for a little bit? I wrote down the you, the they, the why, and kind of a conversation you and I had before.
Yeah, let's do that, and then we can look at some data, and then we'll keep it here, and then we'll kind of go back and forth. So, okay, yes, everybody has access to data, whether you use it or not, whether you've invested in it or not. You do have the opportunity to have access to NMLS data and MLS data. It used to be, and it still is today, that if you want to go pay a bunch of money and go to the aggregator and purchase a bunch of data, you can do that. You're going to get it in a static Excel spreadsheet, and then you've got to do a fair amount of work to figure out how am I going to utilize that data to create value for myself. And then there's platforms. Model Match is one, but there are others that take that data and sort of make it easier to use, right? That's what SaaS is supposed to do. What's the value of technology? Well, it's to create an efficiency. It's doing all this work behind the scenes so that you can go take that tech, whatever it is, and get directly to what it is you need, and hopefully buy yourself some time. And look, what we're looking at here, and I'm gonna go even further. So what we're looking at here is just a map. So we've got Raleigh, North Carolina pulled up, and let's say I'm an originator and I need to increase my touches to potential referral partners, right? I can go into data, in this case MLS data, and I can say, hey, find me agents that meet specific criteria within a particular radius, within a particular miles of wherever I'm located. And I can start to look at some of this data. And so in our case, we're going to show you volume. We're going to show you buy-side transaction, list transaction, where they were the dual agent. You can see what your wallet share is with these referral partners. You can see where their business is going. And let me digress for a moment. John, it sort of makes me think a little bit, when we were thinking about this as we built this out, was as in the past, before we had our technology, before we built Model Match, we were a consultant and a partner to people like John Gibson to help grow channels, to grow divisions, retail, wholesale, correspondent. Well, back in the day, I guess I'm old enough to say back in the day. Back in the day, you kind of just start dialing for dollars. You call the first person, you ask the first person questions. Hopefully it leads you to 3 or 4 more, and you get closer and closer and closer to those individuals that meet your criteria. You don't have to do that anymore. You can actually use data to go find the 10 or 15 referral partners that meet the criteria that lines up with who you are. But I think about wholesale, TPO as an example. Wholesale was ahead of the game. Right? I mean, wholesale was utilizing data to figure out who are the potential broker partners that we should be talking to. And not just because we want to talk to them, because we notice something in the data that makes us believe that we can create value for them.
100% being utilized in the wholesale channel, for sure.
And was being utilized before it was being utilized by the originators that the wholesale channel supported.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. And so, by the way, funny story. So when I started in 94, 95 in the industry, I was a retail loan officer for 1.5 years. This didn't exist, right? Like, how I figured out who I was going to partner with was my manager we'd have Monday morning sales meetings. And then for 2.5 hours, we would have the local real estate magazine, right? That you could flip through. I forget what it was called. I was up in Pennsylvania. I forget what the hell it was called back then. And literally, you would just start seeing agents and start dialing for dollars, right? And it was a shotgun approach. Make 100 calls, maybe you get 50 rejections, 25 voicemails, people blowing you off. And out of 300-400 calls, you might have set a lunch appointment or a breakfast appointment with a real estate agent, right? This is different, right? Now you're talking about, in an age of all this data, you can get very surgical. I love that word. My daughter and my wife hate hearing me say it. We pull up to Costco and I get out of the car and I'm like, all right, let's be surgical, because I don't want to be in here any longer than I need to be.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's about efficiencies, right? Here you're looking at a radius. I'm a retail LO in the Raleigh-Durham area, and I have parameters of, the who that I would like to see is doing the business based off of X, Y, and Z, the data points that I'm pulling. And like you said right there, I can start seeing agents, buy side, listing side, their total volume, dual agent. I think you mentioned someone in here, you could see if I have any market share with them, meaning did I close any loans with them? But it's amazing to me how much data is actually out there.
And that's actually part of the problem also, right? It's sort of like when, look, I love New York City, but when I go to my favorite diners in New York City, the problem is the friggin' menu for those diners is 25 pages long. I don't want to look at 25 pages. I just want to tell the wait staff what it is I like, and I want them to bring me. It's like the wait staff is my artificial intelligence, right? I'm just telling them, hey, this is what I like. Just bring me what I want.
Sure.
Well, this is sort of similar in that case, and I want you to bring me back at some point in this conversation, though, to the question around where this data can then be a detriment, though, because there is something that can happen that can create a detriment. But you were talking about getting surgical. Well, here, as we get surgical, we pulled up this list, and let's say now I know my list. There might be 500 agents in this radius, but I don't have time to go hit up every 500. And by the way, probably only 15 or 20% of those referral partners are a fit for my business and my personality anyway. So let me go find those 15 to 20 or whatever that number is. Well, now I've found them inside of our environment, which is a little different. You can then associate those opportunities to a project where you can begin to take action. It's not just data anymore. Now I have to do something. I have to send a text message. I have to associate them to a CRM journey. I need to make a phone call. By the way, phone calls still work, believe it or not. Actually hearing their voice and let them hear your voice actually matters. But I can do a deeper drill down with this data to see, more information. Will show me what they're doing on a rolling 14. Let me do some customized date ranges. Let me see what originators this referral partner is also working with and where they're sending their business. Let me see a deeper dive into their product mix. I'm not showing the whole screen here, but maybe even drill down into transaction data a little bit deeper. And another thing that I'll throw out is that if you're someone building your office, building your market, and trying to partner with new originators to bring onto your team, you can do the exact same thing with this data on the NMLS side. And so it works in concert. Within our environment, you can do some pretty deep filtering. But look, where you get the data and how you use that data is ultimately up to you. And then you were also asking about wallet share. Sure. I mean, here I can see what originators that this agent is working with. If you flipped it, and I looked at the originator, if I looked at Mark, well, then I could see what agents Mark is actually partnered with. Okay, this might show us who it is we should be talking to. But the next question is then, what are we going to talk to them about? Right?
Yeah.
And some of that then gets realized as we start to dive into transaction data as an example. But let me stop there for just a second, and you pepper me, ask me something, or any direction you want me to take this in.
No, I think this is good, right? Because I think if you're looking at it as an LO, right, you start looking at 2024, your game plan, and you're setting yourself up for success, right? You're looking at data, you're narrowing your search, you're being targeted in your approach, you're figuring out the sample set of who matches what you do best, right, in your marketplace. Just as important, I think you can see I hate to say it this way, right? But like, you kind of look at organizations, right? And a lot of times it's like, the top 20 or 30% of the people in the organization are doing 75 or 80% of the production, right?
Sure.
Well, I think you said it earlier, right? You might have 50 real estate agents in this radius that you're looking at, but who are the ones that are actually doing the business, right? Like, and not only just 1 month, but as you were showing, like a rolling 14. I don't know if you go any further back on that in your sample sets too, but like the ability to be very strategic in your approach in who you're going to call on, I think is the foundation, as I like to call it, right?
100%. And by the way, our data goes all the way back to 2015, and then you can create custom date ranges. But let's say you were working off an Excel spreadsheet and you weren't inside of a platform like Model Match. Well, then it's just up to you to make sure that you know how to filter that spreadsheet, right? So you can filter that spreadsheet so you can see, because John, you bring up a really good point. Look, I should want to see trends. I should want to see who's actually growing, who's dropping back, who's had peaks and valleys in their business, by the way. And then you, as their partner, hopefully can show them, hey, I noticed this about your business. I think I can help you. You've now flipped the script a little bit. Instead of walking in and asking them for their business, you may now be walking in and showing them how you can help them expand their business. Maybe it's through a product offering that you have. Maybe it's through some co-marketing campaigns that you're doing. Maybe it's something else unique you're doing within social or something along those lines. But, to your point, going back to pages like this, you can filter it so deep that you might start off with 500 in the market. And now I'm only looking at the 10 that I need to take action on. And this was a question I used to ask, back in the day, which was, I know you might not have time to call 50 people in a day, but do you have time to call 5? And nobody's going to say no to that. But if you're going to call 5, well, it ought to be the 5 that at least line up with your criteria. And then maybe let's go off script for just a second. So you were asking me earlier about knowing who you are, right? Making sure you understand who you are. So one of the things that we've always kind of coached around is understanding who you are relative to 6 core competencies that really line up with those individuals that you want to partner with. So you should understand your own value proposition, right? Across your business, operations, technology, geography, leadership, culture. These things matter, as well as what's your minimum expectation of those that you're going to do business with. I mean, I might get really excited about partnering with a referral partner because it's a new referral partner, but if they don't do any business, what's the point? Right? What's the point of actually doing it? So once you understand who you are, you can better then communicate with those individuals that you do want to partner with. And so that's the exercise that we talk about, is understanding who you are. The next step is then understanding who they are. With the they part of it is not only the data, but it's also what's been their experience operationally with other companies. What's been their experience from a technology perspective? Has anybody ever created value for them to help them identify property opportunities or some sort of data detail that maybe they don't have access to? So yeah, that's a little bit about those, understanding who you are and understanding who they are. Let's keep rolling with the slides though. Let's keep them up. So okay. you made a comment about getting surgical, right?
Yep.
So we've I was having this conversation with one of our developers this morning because we're about to roll out another feature set within the software. And my comment to the developer was, that's incredible. Because I was so excited about what we're doing. I was super stoked about some deeper filtering that we're going to be able to do to drive loan opportunities to loan officers. But here was my question. Is it easy? Is it easy to use? Because if you're asking the user now to have to go down a deep rabbit hole of training, that can sometimes be a challenge. Well, I would tell everybody on this call, the top 10% in this industry, they're power users of their tech, and they do go down deep rabbit holes. So that's who you're in competition with. But that's not everybody necessarily. So my comment was, you know how when you go to send an email that your email account doesn't allow you to send because it doesn't meet the security whatever of your firewall, and then if you open it up, it says like normal, advanced, enhanced, and you can select which sort of security you want. Well, what we just looked at, John, was sort of like average. I can go into a market, I can do some filters, I can find out who I might want to talk to, and I can see their detail. This is now some more enhanced opportunities where with the data, can I see all of those referral partners that are associated to my NMLS ID in a curated list that shows me who I should be talking to without me having to go through some filtering. Who has active listings? Who do I have a direct relationship with where maybe they were on the buy side of the transaction? They were the buyer's agent on a transaction going back 2 years ago, maybe. And then who else are they doing business with? On this particular screen, this is just showing you how we're curating that data. Again, there's other data providers. You can still have this inside of a spreadsheet. But where we're basically saying, hey, look, here's your top referral partners. Here's the ones that you've had that currently have active listings, ones that you've had buy side connections with in the past, maybe list side as well, who are low cash, meaning most of their business is mortgaged, right? So that I know that there's an opportunity there. And then can I do a drill down to sort of start to see, okay, these purple bullets show me where I've been involved in a transaction, but what about all these other bullets? Those are going elsewhere. Can I look on top of those bullets and say, well, what were the loan types of the ones that I missed? And where did it go? What company? What originator? So if this person had 50 transactions in the last 24 months or last 12 months, right? And I picked up 4 of them. Woohoo, great. That's a relationship. This person knows me. They probably trust me enough to do business with me. But what if 80% of the transactions that I didn't get were just simply 20% down, $500,000 loans, conventional purchase, nothing special about it? Why am I missing those loans?
That to me, we've talked about this before the session, right? So I think a lot of times this data where it becomes incredibly valuable is what we're talking about right now, which is, I'll use your example, right? Maybe they've done 20 transactions and you were involved in 4, let's just say 5 of them, right?
Right.
That's a decent wallet share at the end of the day, right?
Sure.
Like real estate agent, 20 transactions, you were involved in 5 of them. That's a really good market share. A lot of people would raise their hand and say, I take that in every relationship I have right now.
Right.
But to me, it's the other part, which is there was 15 I didn't get a crack at.
Right.
Why? Am I pigeonholed as the person that's that individual's go-to FHA lender? And the only FHA transactions they did, I got 100% of them.
So you just made me think of a story that is a true story that just happened a few weeks ago, and it was it was somebody, we rolled this out. This is called Pulse AI with inside of Model Match, and this person called me up and said, "Hey, I just used Pulse, and I noticed that my top agent, I looked at their data, and I thought I was getting all of their business." That's what they said. And I looked at it, and it turns out I'm only getting 25% of their business. Well, by the way, 25% is still not bad. I mean, that's a decent number, because it turns out I'm only getting 25% of the business. Now, there was a pause. And of course, since I'm the cynical guy, I thought what he was getting ready to say is your data's wrong and I'm getting all the business and you're saying I'm only getting 25% of the business. But that's not what he said. What he said was, what I realized was I'm getting 100% of a very specific product. That's what I'm getting. Right? So he called this person up and said, "Hey, I'm looking at the data and I'm noticing this, and you're not sending me all your business. Why? What am I doing wrong?" And she said, "I am sending you all of the business." But she was thinking the same way. You can only support me on this product. So I'm sending you 100% of the product. Turns out he can support her across all those products. And now he's picking up the business. And so his comment to me was, "I love this, but it really ticked me off today because I did the math on all the business that I haven't been getting over the last 24 months." Right.
I think it allows you, like, look, so many times there's accountability in things, right? Like if it's a partnership, it should be a two-way street. And at the end of the day, this type of data, you guys, Pulse AI with Inside Model Match, and again, there's plenty of data sources out there.
Sure.
It gets you line of sight into things that you would have had to have asked in the past. And in your example, even if I was the LO and I asked that lady the question without knowing all this information, she's going to tell me I'm getting all of her business. And I wouldn't know any different.
That's right. That's right. And so now you can come to the conversation with, I see what I'm getting. I see what I'm not getting. How can I do something to pick up this business? Look, I mean, you shouldn't be afraid to ask, but how do you know what to ask if you don't have the data in front of you?
100%.
It opens up the door. It opens up the door to a conversation. And look, some other simple things that, when we think about listings, there's a lot of ways to get information on listings. But if you can see these active listings that are with your relationships, and again, these might not be relationships that you've had direct relationships with. And here's what I mean by that. You're the originator on a property, and the listing agent is someone that you've never actually done a loan on the buy side with, right? So you don't have a relationship with that listing agent other than an indirect relationship on a property, right? That you were involved in. Well, if I can see the active listings of those individuals, and then I can see, and so let me go to the next side, I can actually see property detail on something that I was involved in with that listing agent. Well, all of this information is the opportunity for me to start engagement, and with some level of trust, right? I can talk about the borrower, I can talk about the property, I can talk about that particular loan. So to your point, this is what we're looking at now, starting back here, where we're really doing a deep dive into these color-coded bullets on transactions that maybe we weren't involved with, but we could pick up additional market share with someone we already have a relationship with. This is that difference between sort of your regular security and your enhanced security. Yeah. So if you just go regular, well then, okay, great. Let's find opportunity to use data that's just high level NMLS and MLS data. But if we want to do a deeper dive, man, there is so much we could do with this data. By the way, these are the things that those LOs that have only been in the business for a year or two, that's the reason why they're winning market share with your referral partners. But here's the funny part. They don't know any different. They came into this business with
That's
this
right.
was the first thing that they did. And so, John, I don't know if you saw it, but months ago, as we were building this out, months ago, I had put up a LinkedIn video that where I said one of the greatest pieces of advice that I can give right now is that if you've been in this business for a while and you're struggling to grow your business, ask your rookie brain what it would do right now. Pretend like you're brand new to the industry and you have no referral partners. What would you do? What's the first thing that you would do? And just start there. And a lot of times the answer to that question is, I need to invest in some tools and resources that I'm not using because I didn't need them 10 years ago, but I'm doing business from 10 years ago.
Right.
If you can put the two together, that's the holy grail of production.
So question came up, and I was going to ask you because I think it's a good, not a transition, but it's a good talking point for where we're at right now, right? Which is, I think there's probably a variety of people that are going to see this, right? Some that are using data in some form or fashion, some that have never embraced it. To your point, I think it's wide end of the spectrum. A lot of what we're talking about right now is related to the loan officer themselves, right? Inside their marketplace, trying to build referral relationships. I guess the question, I've seen it a couple different ways, is so how do you take this data to like the next level, right? So clients that you've been working with and the experiences you called a couple stories already. How do you take this data to a referral partner, not to find a referral partner, but how do you take the data to them to help them grow their market share and their book of business? For example, real estate agents, right? How can you use data from a tool like Model Match, Pulse, call it what you want inside, and how can you bring value to the business partner to help them grow their business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the simpler answer, or the simple answer, is to think about yourself first and how you can create value for them that you know isn't happening already, right? So I think it goes back to that example of you see information that tells you this business is going elsewhere, but I can support that business. The other thing that you might notice is you look at a referral partner, you look at their business, and you see the space that they're generally playing with. Well, as you get market intelligence on a market, which you can do as well, right? Show me what the average loan amount, show me what the demographics are of this market. Let's do a deep dive. You might be able to then go to that referral partner and say, hey, look, you're missing out on some business that I think I can help you with. So those would be a couple of things that I would throw out there. Now that referral partner though might then say, right, well, that's not a segment of the business that's not a segment of the community that I really support or that I want to support for whatever reason. But that also is that referral partner's way of telling you, I'm doing the amount of business I want to do.
That's right. But that's okay for you to ascertain, right? As the LO working with that individual, now you know what lane you're in with them, right?
100%. So then the next question is, hey, I'm capturing 2% of your conventional business. What can I do to help increase that to 5%? I'm not telling you to kick all your other partners to the curb, but I would love to know what's the feedback. Why am I not capturing more? Why did I only capture 2% and maybe this company over here captured 8%? What is the difference? By the way, you might already know the answer to that question. If you understand your competition, which by the way, this now leads us into where data doesn't create all the value. And that is, you still need to have conversations in your market to understand truly what the competitive intelligence is. What are those other loan officers? What is the competition doing that maybe you're not doing? Is it really product? Is it really price? Or is it maybe something else? Are they partnering, doing some co-marketing campaigns? Are they doing some things on social media together? Or maybe they're just better at follow up and follow through than you are, which by the way, if that's the case, that's terrible. However, it's the easiest thing to fix.
100%. Right. And that's why I think I always, like you heard me say, I've said it like probably 10 times, surgical, right? But I love this aspect of the analytics and the data that at your fingertips, right? Because I do think at some point it forces you to take a hard look at yourself too, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
but then you can also have legitimate conversations around actual facts and data that can lead to a couple different things, right? It can lead to increased wallet share because in your example, I thought I was giving you 100% because I thought that's all you did. Well, guess what? I'm pretty sure you're going to, at some point in our paths as they continue down this road of mortgage industry, you're going to tell me, oh, guess what? That person's now getting 50% of the volume from that real
Right.
estate agent, right? Because they know. But I also like the idea of you think you know who your competition is, but this data actually validates it for you and it tells you who you're actually competing with and where that volume's going, right? And
Well, I
then
tell you, the some of the coolest things that happened early on when we first, so a little bit of context. Model Match started as a contact management tool. There was no data because we truly believed from a recruiting firm that we had built before Model Match that the gaps in the process is what happens from the point where you identify someone, you start to build a relationship, and then what happens next. So Model Match was really built as an LOS for business development. And so think about it this way. A pre-qual is really just data, right? I mean, that's fair. But
yeah,
once that pre-qual turns into an application, well, that application is now what? A relationship. There's a relationship that's there. Then that goes to processing. Then it goes to underwriting. Then it goes to clear to close. Then it goes to close, and then we're funding. Well, think of this from a relationship building perspective now. As I identify a referral partner through data, that's a pre-qual, but there is no relationship yet. I still have to do something to build the relationship. Pre-data, though, Model Match was built to say, these are the 10 people I know I need to build a relationship with, plug them into the technology. The technology is going to remind you to stay in touch with them. It's going to go find contact information. It's going to go find social media links. I can text from the software. I can email from the software. I can make phone calls from the software. I can track all of my notes. I can collaborate with my boss. I can collaborate with other people on my team inside of the technology the same way you do it as alone traveling through the LOS. No different. But when that person moves to a meeting, now I have a meeting with this referral partner to talk to them about how I can create value for them. Now we're in underwriting. There's more, that's more of a priority than the one that's over in the pre-qual. Now I'm in underwriting with this particular person. Then they send me the first loan. I've closed that loan. Now I'm in a retention mode with them, right? Now I'm in servicing, let's call it. Well, servicing goes back to what you were saying about making sure you stay on top of the relationships you already have to increase your market share and make sure somebody's not coming in and winning that business from you. So that's where Model Match started. Where the data came from was an additional efficiency, and the efficiency was, I don't know who to call. So let's go purchase all the NMLS and MLS data. Let's plug it into a platform so you don't have to leave your content, your conversational environment, your history, your tasks, your collaboration, and your reporting, by the way. And we've just now become, I'm very proud of what we've built on the data side and clearly see the tremendous value out. But here's another one. Data by itself has no value. Other than you're retired and you're just sitting around, you want to like look at the scoreboard, so to speak. But if you want to actually do something with that scoreboard, you have to make it actionable. And that's where Model Match started versus the other way around.
right. And I think that's a key thing just to spend a minute on or two, right, Eric, as we're kind of getting to the finish line, right? Like
Sure.
all this is great. And by the way, there's a whole nother use case on here that we only touched on, right? So if you're somebody that is a owner of a company, right? And let's face it, in a lot of instances, especially in the broker space, obviously correspondent, same type of thing. But a lot of times owners tend to be pretty good producers, like probably the top producer inside a branch or an office, right? There's a whole nother conversation you can have around using the data set to be surgical in your targeting and prospecting of LOs to bring into your company and to validate what they actually say they do, right? So there's a whole nother segment there.
100%.
So, but I think we talked about a couple of things, right? As a LO, how do you maximize your efforts and get more efficient and strategic in building your referral sources? Check that box, right? I think we've talked about that. Second box, the referral relationships. how can you utilize this information to bring value? I like how you phrase it, right? There's the you part that's going to trump everything.
Yep.
Because you could bring the best data in the world, but if you're not returning phone calls, you're providing like a service that they think is terrible, this starting certain all these other things, they're going to thank you for the information, but you're never going to get a referral.
Yeah. And then you're one of those originators. You're just waiting for rates to drop. That's all you're doing.
100%, right? That's how they view it. That's how somebody would view it, right?
Yep.
But here's my question for you around that topic. So it's maybe not a question, right? But they're all, everybody's looking for the same thing in general, right? Like, and we hear a lot of times, like, I know back in the day, real estate agents were like, hey, the best way you could build a relationship with me is bring a buyer to the table, right? Like, give me a pre-approval, give me a pre-qual. But short of doing something like that, where you're walking a buyer into a real estate agent, am I crazy to think, like, if I sat down and looked at data like this and I was working with a real estate agent as a referral partner, that I could come together with a data set that shows them where maybe some of their missed opportunities are? You talked about earlier where I'm not getting the transactions. I'm only getting 5 out of 20. Can't you use this same data to come walk into a real estate agent, educate them on, look, they're going to know, hopefully, what's going on in their marketplace, but really to sit down and have a straight conversation with them of, this is where your opportunity exists and here's where I can help.
Absolutely. And so what we were if you just reverse engineer the data, which is kind of what you're getting at, if you reverse engineer the data, that referral partner, that real estate agent can go into the MLS data and basically do the same thing from a competitive intel perspective, and then look at transaction detail. And as they look at the transaction detail, they'll be able to see, well, what loans what opportunities within a particular radius of my backyard am I not getting? And there's real estate companies that are using Model Match for that purpose. Actually, they're also using Model Match for the purpose of recruiting new real estate agents into their shop. You know what they're also doing? They do look at the NMLS side sometimes as well. I mean, and it'll tell them a story. Who's the up and comer in the market, who's driving more business maybe with their competition, and maybe is that an originator that they should be doing something with. So that data, I'll throw, you were talking about the recruiting side of this, where if you're an owner, you can use this obviously on the NMLS side to grow your company by multiples. Because if I recruit a good originator, I'm not just picking up one loan, I'm picking up a multiple of loans and also new referral partners in the midst of all of that as well. Well, those originators now have an expectation of this data. That's kind of happened in this industry now. There's an expectation that I'm going to have access to data like this. So in the process of building that relationship, just showing them that you have the data, whether it's your referral partner or another originator, that creates value for them in the conversation.
It's so funny you say that, because I've been involved recently with a business partner of ours that is recruiting a team from somewhere, and who may have gone out of business, right? Or pulled out of a space, whatever the case may be. And that team is looking to make a decision. And one of the places is with one of our business partners, right? So we've been having conversations as a partner with them on, hey, X, Y, and Z, right? But one of the things that I know they were challenged with, and they were able to check the box, maybe not, it's not Model Match, but it's another entity.
Sure.
It was one of the determining factors on where this group was going to go. Like, do you support having the ability to have access? We had this at our previous company. Do you have something similar? And in getting the conversation, I believe if the answer to those questions were no, the companies that they were talking to, because there's more than just one, they were immediately scratched off, unless they were willing to immediately adopt it upon them saying yes to coming. But it's a valid point, because it could actually be a detriment to your recruiting opportunities.
Yeah, you absolutely, as that originator or manager on the other side, and within Model Match, 100%. I can just, instead of looking at individual contributors, I can look at branches. I can look at whole companies for that matter. I got a phone call the other day from someone who said, hey, if you happen to know somebody that could be that run our builder channel, I would love an introduction. Well, while I'm on the phone, I pulled up Model Match, pulled up this company, the whole company, saw their total volume, and I could see the percentage of construction. And so right there on the phone, I could say, well, looks like you guys are doing about 15, 16% of your business is construction. And, in that moment,
Yep.
I could do a deeper vet versus having to ask questions and then trust what I'm hearing from the other side. And by the way, I will say this, let's also all keep in mind that the data is the data from a raw perspective for just about everybody. How it's being delivered might be different from platform to platform, but the data is going to be dependent upon the local county reporting, product, things like that. So consider that when you think about this data also.
That's a great point. The data is the data, right? How it's obtained by the individuals, like a model match compared to somebody else, how efficient that is.
How often they're delivering, like how often we're ingesting it in within a certain time frame, and then we're putting it into the software in a very quick time frame. But that can be different from platform to platform for sure.
Is the data 120 days ago? Is it 60 days ago? Right.
Great
Some of
question.
that's dependent on how quick the county records and all that stuff. But it's a great point that the data is the data. There's ultimately everybody's driving to the same thing to extract. It's who you choose, how they extract it, how they deliver it, and then more importantly, to your point, all the different features within inside a platform. Like this Pulse was what, quite honestly, for everybody on here, Pulse is what got me having this conversation to bring Eric on Flex, because when he started talking to me about dinner and one of his main guys was with him at the dinner, I started ripping down my head, like, what could this do for our business partners? Hence why we wanted to bring Eric on so we could just talk about it more. So I think we've checked a couple boxes. One of the questions that come up, a couple of them, but I'll just phrase it in a different way is, and we'll kind of wrap up on this. I think I'll probably ask you one more question. What are you seeing, right? Without giving anything away that would be, confidential for your business, for your business partners that you do business with, but the role of social media along with this data, like what are you seeing are some of the best things that are working where people are taking this information while they're embracing social, because everybody's doing it, right? It's the way to get into contact with people. How do you see that marriage, so to speak?
Yeah, a great question. And so it goes back to efficiency. It's one thing to create content and throw it out to everybody. It's something else to create content that can be very targeted. So you can create that tighter target by looking at the data and then targeting those opportunities with specific content. We've gone in this industry from just old school outreach to then we got these really cool CRMs that did automated drip marketing campaigns. But I'll tell you, man, I can tell you stories of people that have called me to say, hey, I'm about to change companies, and we want to work with you guys. We want access to the technology, and I'll just say, where are you going? And they'll tell me. I'll say, well, that kind of surprises me. Why didn't you talk to such and such? And they'll say, oh, well, we don't. They're not a good fit for us. And you know how they know that they're not a good fit? Because of a freaking drip marketing flyer that they've gotten every 30 days for the past 2 years, that they've built their own story around who this company is based upon drip marketing. There's nothing targeted about that. It's just, let me throw out the widest net and see what happens. So we actually have a couple of social media content platforms that use Model Match to help their users target their audience. So that would be the high level answer to your question.
Got it. I would say, what do you want to talk about kind of ending? But I think I'm going to steer you in one thing to kind of end on, right? And it's from a note that you sent me on this. So I'm going to read it and you fill in the blanks, right? It was, data is great. It creates efficiencies, education, market awareness, keep going down the rabbit hole. However, without a process of blank, the data has no value. What's that word?
Action. It's always action. So if you have like your little business development guru sitting on your shoulder at all times, whatever it is you just did, ask yourself, what's the next action? And let me tell, there's a difference between action and status. Status is, I had a good conversation with John and we're going to follow up in a couple of weeks. That's not an action. An action is, I have a conversation scheduled for this day, this time, and I already know what the topic is. That's an action. Now, your whole pipeline is not going to be filled up with actions, but it certainly helps you prioritize where you should be focused and how to fill gaps. There's nothing worse than going out and doing the front end work, You get the data, you do the outreach, you do the front end work, you start the beginning of a conversation, and then you just get busy and you don't do anything with this person. And then you come to find out that your competition down the road just increased their market share with that person by 50%, only because you didn't do the next thing. Action over everything. The data is valuable. It creates an efficiency. It creates a targeted filtered list. It gives you things to talk about so that you can create value. But if you don't do something with that data, there's no value.
Yeah, and I'd throw up where to reach out to Eric again real quick before we let him go. I think you'll see his LinkedIn profile coming up. Obviously, we record these, we send them back out. If you're seeing it live, obviously, thanks for joining us. If you're watching it on a replay or in case you missed it type of thing, here's how you get in touch with Eric. Eric, what else? Anything else in closing?
Well, I hope I'm going to throw something out. I hope it's not inappropriate, but I know that I think there was a comment or question that came up about like, how can I use this? Can I get a demo? Like if you go to our website, modelmatch.com, there's a space where you can just click get demo. So go check it out, give us feedback, tell us what you think. When you do it, let us know that you came across this on the Flagstar Flex series and my conversation with you today, John. But that's the easiest way to go get a deeper dive into the technology.
Awesome, man. Hey, always good catching up with you, brother. I appreciate it. Thanks for doing this and look, kind of debunking some of the myths around all this data and what you can do with it. And more importantly, like we talked about, right? It's just setting yourself up for success. It's just being more efficient, creating the opportunities, looking at missed opportunities, but nothing's more important. I think you said it to me before, something about like having the information or being aware of the situation is great. It's just not good enough, right? Like it's awesome to know it, but if you don't connect the dots and take the action, then it's just not going to get you where you want to be. So
you got to follow a process and make sure you're always asking yourself, what's the next action? But look, man, thanks for having me on. Anytime you're asking, I'm saying yes.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, gang. Hey, appreciate you again. Like if you saw it live, awesome. If you're watching it on a recording or a snippet of it, awesome. Modelmatch.com. You can click on the link for a demo for free, no hassle, no nothing, right? You can kind of see what it's all about. But look, I think 2024 is going to be a good year. There's no doubt about it, right? At some point, the Fed's going to cut rates. Don't know when that is. Nobody really does. There's so many different schools of thought out there. But I think we're all pretty sure that at some point, we're going to see the start of rate cuts, right? Whether that's May, whether that's later in the year, Q3, Q4, rolling into 25. We're already seeing refinance activity pick up, right? Cash out refinances have spiked in the last 2 weeks, which, by the way, another opportunity there. Hey, the one thing I didn't talk about on that opportunity is he mentioned cash buyers, right? So you could see how many transactions took place in a marketplace that were cash and had mortgages. Well, there's an opportunity for delayed financing conversation with real estate agents that are doing the cash transactions, right? Or had cash transactions. So think about that too. But he's a great guy. I've known Eric for a very, very long time. I think I knew him back in the day when it was the recruiting side of the house, and they have morphed into so much more over time. And they're doing some really, really good things around the data, working with a lot of LOs like yourself, owners of companies like yourself, to really just help maximize your own personal, whether it be individual LO or company, wallet, market share, and setting yourself up for success. So I thought it was timely. Data, beginning of the year, always important. Next up in February, on the 8th at 2 p.m., friend of the program, Barry Habib, CEO of MBS Highway, is going to join us again. Thought it was timely, right? We'll be a month in, a little bit under our belt, a little bit more insight into like how the year started. But Barry's going to join us in February and talk all things mortgage and kind of what his viewpoint looks like for 2024, what he's seeing, what he's forecasting, and what you can expect from the mortgage industry in 2024. So we're really appreciative for Barry jumping on and doing that again. I think it's going to be the third or fourth time we've had him. So looking forward to that. As always, can't say thank you enough. Obviously, we appreciate your business. We appreciate your partnership. We know you have choices. We have to earn it. But thanks again, and make it a great rest of your day. Take care.